Touch me, and you'll forget every other woman.
I won't. I never forget who I am.
The hall was silent. Not the normal kind of silence, but a heavy one. A silence that pressed down on the mind. The air inside the alien palace glowed soft blue, filled with strange symbols floating like slow stars. Tall alien nobles stood in a wide circle, their eyes sharp, cold, and curious. At the center stood a human. His name was Ethan. He looked small here. Too small for this place. His clothes were simple. His hands were empty. Chains lay broken on the floor near his feet, but no one noticed them anymore. All eyes were on his face. He was calm. That alone made the nobles uneasy. Humans were not supposed to be calm. A soft sound echoed across the hall. Slow footsteps. Elegant, powerful. She stepped forward. She was known as Lady Vaelrix, a noble woman of one of the oldest alien houses. Her skin shimmered like silver under the light. Her eyes glowed faint violet, full of confidence and control. Many warriors had fallen to their knees. Just by meeting her gaze, she stopped in front of Ethan. Very close enough for him to feel the warmth of her breath. She leaned down, her lips near his ear, and whispered softly, so softly that only he could hear. "Touch me, and you will forget every other woman." The words were not just sound. They were a weapon, a mind call, a power that reached deep into desire and memory. Around them, the nobles waited. They expected the same result as always. They expected the human to break. For a moment, Ethan felt it. Images tried to enter his mind. Pleasure, comfort, false promises, a sweet lie wrapped in warmth. His hands trembled slightly. Lady Vaelrix smiled. Then, nothing happened. Ethan took a slow breath. He did not move. He did not reach out. He did not look away. He simply stood there. Calm. The smile on Vaelrix's faded. A quiet wave of shock moved through the hall. Whispers began. Low, confused sounds. This was impossible. No species had ever resisted her whisper. Not soldiers. Not kings. Not even her own kind. Vaelrix straightened, her eyes narrowing. "Interesting," she said aloud. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was steady, simple. "Is that all?" The hall froze. No fear. No desire. No anger. Just a question. Vaelrix felt something she had not felt in centuries. Curiosity. Ethan had not planned to be here. Just weeks ago, he was on a small human cargo ship, traveling near the edge of known space. His job was boring. Long hours. Quiet nights. He liked it that way. Then the ship was taken. Alien raiders. Fast, silent, too advanced to fight. The crew was captured, separated, sold. Ethan expected death or slavery. Instead, he was brought here. To the heart of an alien empire. The nobles saw humans as weak, short-lived, easy to control, useful toys at best, dangerous animals at worst. Ethan learned quickly that fear made things worse. So he stayed quiet. He watched, he listened, and he remembered who he was. Vaelrix circled him slowly now, studying him like a puzzle. "You felt it," she said. "Do not lie." "Yes," Ethan replied. "I felt it, and yet you resisted." "Yes, why?" Ethan thought for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "Because it was not real." That answer struck deeper than any insult. Vaelrix stopped walking. "Everything you felt was real," she said coldly. Ethan met her eyes. "No," he said. "It was control." The nobles murmured again. Control was power. Control was respected. But the way he said it, it sounded small, weak, unworthy. Vaelrix studied his face, searching for cracks. For hunger. For fear, she found none. Instead, she found something unfamiliar: restraint. "Humans are fragile," she said. "Your kind breaks easily." And nodded. "Sometimes. Then why didn't you break?" Ethan's answer was quiet. Because humans learned long ago that wanting everything makes you lose yourself. Silence returned. He did not know why he said that. It was just the truth. Vaelrix took a step back. For the first time, the alien nobles saw uncertainty in their noblewoman's eyes. She turned to the council. "This one is different," she said. "He will stay." Ethan's chest tightened slightly. "Stay? How?" he asked. Vaelrix looked back at him, a slow smile returning, this time not confident, but intrigued. "Close," she said. "Very close." As the lights dimmed and the nobles began to leave, Ethan realized something important. He had not survived because he was strong. He had survived because he was human. And somewhere deep inside the alien noblewoman's mind, a dangerous thought had begun to grow. What else could humans do if they chose to? The next day, the palace was alive with quiet tension. Ethan had been moved to a private chamber, but the walls were still filled with eyes, metaphorical eyes, as information traveled faster than people. Every noble who had witnessed the previous day's defiance spoke in whispers. Lady Vaelrix entered the room, her presence commanding attention even without her words. She moved like a shadow of power, smooth and deliberate. "You survived yesterday," she said. Her voice carried both challenge and curiosity. "No one ever does. Why should I continue this game?" Ethan stood, calm as before. "I don't play games." Her laugh was soft, musical, yet sharp. "Games? You think your kind can survive this without bending? Without fear? Let me show you." Vaelrix extended her hand, and the air in the room seemed to change. A strange hum filled the space. Colors shifted around Ethan, forming patterns that tugged at his mind. Each pattern carried a whisper, a suggestion, a temptation. Humans, she knew, were weak when confronted with the mind's power. Soldiers and spies from countless worlds had fallen instantly. But Ethan, he felt it, acknowledged it, and held his ground. Images flashed in his mind. A life of comfort, safety, fame, the noblewoman herself offering pleasure beyond imagination. Every desire, every hidden fantasy, played like a movie inside his head. His hands clenched. He thought of Earth, of home, of people he had loved and lost, of the quiet life he had known before the galaxy had pulled him into this place. The patterns tried harder. They whispered louder. They promised a life of power, of wealth, of attention. They whispered that surrendering was easier, that giving in would bring peace. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "I am not yours," he said softly, not just to Vaelrix, but to the whispers themselves. Vaelrix's eyes widened, just slightly. She had never heard such defiance. Not even from her own people. "You feel it," she said. "Do not lie." "Yes," Ethan replied. "I feel it. And I resist it." A tense pause followed. Then she moved closer. She was no longer smiling. She was studying, calculating, intrigued. Interesting. Very interesting. She circled him slowly, letting her power wash over him again. But Ethan did not flinch. He did not move. He simply watched her, observed, learned. This is new," she murmured. "No one has ever resisted me fully. Why?" "Because humans are not weak," Ethan said. "They survive. They adapt. They fight differently." Vaelrix blinked, almost in disbelief. She had always assumed humans were fragile, that they broke under the weight of power. But this one, he was different. "You have no fear," she said. "No desire to surrender?" "I have fear," Ethan said honestly. "Fear keeps me alive. But I will not surrender myself for it." For a moment, silence fell. Not the heavy silence of the hall before, but a quiet tension between two beings who understood the power of the other. Vaelrix's mind, trained to dominate, to crush, to command, began to feel curiosity. Something unfamiliar. Something dangerous, You are very different, she admitted. I should destroy you. You would fail, Ethan replied calmly. That simple statement made her stop. The weight of his words, the calm certainty, was something she could not manipulate. Not with power, not with fear, not with whispers of desire. Her lips curved into a slow smile, though it lacked its usual confidence. Perhaps I underestimated humans, perhaps. You are more than I thought. The door opened suddenly, and 2 attendants entered. My lady, one said, the council waits for your decision. Vaelrix glanced at Ethan. Stay, she said. Close. I wish to learn more about you. Ethan nodded once. His chest tightened slightly, but not from fear. From awareness. He was safe for now. But he also knew that being close meant the real test was just beginning. Outside, the Empire continued its cold, rigid life, unaware that a human's calm defiance had begun to plant a seed of doubt. A seed that might grow into something the galaxy had never imagined. Ethan did not know how far he could push it. But he knew one thing: humans did not surrender. Humans adapted. Humans survived. And sometimes, humans changed everything. Days passed in the alien palace. But time felt different for Ethan. The walls were cold, glowing with soft lights, but he had learned to see patterns, to read the moods of the nobles from subtle movements, the flicker of a glance, the rhythm of their steps. Lady Vaelrix visited him often. At first, her visits were tests. Now they were something else. Curiosity. She asked questions, watched his reactions, and sometimes, almost unconsciously, revealed her own secrets. You think humans are simple, she said one evening, her violet eyes reflecting the palace lights. Why did you resist me? Every other being would have fallen. Ethan leaned against the wall, calm as always. Because humans are not simple. They survive. They think. They care about what matters. Vaelrix paused, clearly not expecting the answer. She had assumed her power could bend any creature, could strip away identity, fear, and loyalty alike. But here, standing in front of her, was a human who refused to be anything but himself. She circled him slowly, letting her eyes roam over his form, not in desire, but in study. You are interesting. Dangerous, perhaps. Ethan smiled faintly. Only if you try to use humans as toys. Her laugh was soft, a mixture of amusement and irritation. I do not use what I cannot control, and yet, you intrigue me. From that moment, a strange rhythm developed. She would arrive, ask questions, test his reactions, and leave. Sometimes she left gifts, small, alien trinkets or objects of art from distant worlds. Ethan never accepted them. Not out of defiance, but because he had learned early, humans valued freedom above all. The nobles began to notice. Whispers spread. The human. He is changing her. She spends hours with him, alone. No one has ever seen her like this. Vaelrix noticed too. She had always prided herself on control, influence, power, yet with Ethan she felt something new: uncertainty. Curiosity turned into obsession, though she refused to name it that. One night, she revealed more than usual. A secret plan, hidden deep in the palace archives, about a looming threat to the Empire. I do not usually share this, she admitted. But I want you to know. Ethan listened quietly. Every word was noted, every detail remembered. He never flattered, never overstepped, never judged. He simply observed. The subtle power of humanity lay in restraint, and it was a lesson alien nobles had never received. You are unlike anyone I have known, Vaelrix whispered. Because I am human, Ethan replied simply. Days turned to weeks. Vaelrix found herself thinking of him when she should be planning battles, negotiating alliances, or controlling rivals. Her mind, trained to dominate, now circled around one human who refused to be controlled. The rivals began to notice a subtle shift in the air. The council murmured about favoritism, distraction, weakness. But Vaelrix ignored them. Ethan was no threat, at least not in the way the Empire feared. Instead, he was a mirror. A reflection of restraint, intelligence, and calm defiance that none of them understood. One evening, Vaelrix approached him in the quiet library, the only place in the palace where light was soft and shadows deep. "Tell me," she said, "why do you endure so calmly? Why are you not afraid?" Ethan looked at her simply. "Because fear is useful only if you let it guide you. Humans survive by knowing what matters and ignoring what does not." Vaelrix stared at him, stunned. That simple truth hit harder than any sword, any mind call, any threat the Empire had ever wielded. For the first time, she felt respect, a dangerous, unfamiliar respect. And with respect came fascination, obsession even. She wanted to understand this human, to see how far he could go, how much he could resist, and how strong humanity could be when it refused to bow. Ethan, unaware of the depth of her fascination, simply continued to live, to observe, to survive. And in the palace, a quiet storm was forming. One that the nobles did not see coming. One that might change the Empire forever. The council chamber buzzed with whispers, though no one dared speak aloud. Ethan walked calmly through the hall, flanked by guards, but he did not feel fear. He had learned quickly. The Empire thrived on intimidation, but humans had a different kind of strength. Patience, observation, understanding. Lady Vaelrix had warned him only partially. Rivals among the alien nobles had grown jealous, suspicious, and angry. His calm defiance and the noblewoman's fascination had made him a target. By the time he entered the Grand Council Hall, the trap was set. Holographic displays projected his image across the room. Every noble could see him clearly. A high-ranking noble, Lord Vaelrix, stepped forward, his voice sharp and cold. "This human," he began, "has no place in our empire. He manipulates our Lady Vaelrix with his primitive human ways. He spreads distraction, weakness, and influence where it does not belong." Gasps echoed in the chamber. Murmurs of agreement, of fear, of disbelief. Humans were tiny, short-lived, and usually easy to control. But Ethan, he was different. Vaelrix stood behind him, her expression unreadable. No one knew if she would intervene or watch him fall. Vaelrix raised his clawed hand. "We demand a trial, a public judgment. If he cannot prove his value or worth, he must be removed from the Empire immediately." The council erupted into agreement. The trial was set for the following cycle, a rare, almost ceremonial event. Watched by nobles across distant systems, Ethan listened quietly. He did not speak. There was no panic in his chest, only awareness. He had faced worse. He had survived before, and he had learned the value of calm. Vaelrix finally stepped forward, her eyes locking with his. "Do not fail," she said softly. "I do not plan to," Ethan replied. The day of the trial arrived. The grand chamber was filled with nobles, advisors, and spectators from across the Empire. Ethan's image appeared on the main projection, drawing whispers. Some doubted he could survive this. Others were curious. Lord Vaelrix opened the trial. "We accuse this human of deceit, manipulation, and causing undue fascination to our noblewoman. He shall defend himself if he can." All eyes turned to Ethan. Every movement was watched. Every breath noted. The whispers of desire, fear, and doubt were already buzzing in the chamber, waiting to influence him. Ethan's voice was steady when he spoke. "I am no manipulator. I do not seek power. I do not seek wealth. I am human. I observe, I learn, I act according to reason and loyalty. I have done nothing to harm this empire." A wave of confusion passed through the room. Many had expected him to beg. to plead, to fail. Instead, he spoke simply, clearly, without arrogance, without fear. Vaelrix sneered. Your words are weak. Your kind is weak. You cannot sway the council with talk alone. Ethan nodded. Perhaps. But words are the tools humans have used for millennia. Not power, not fear, but clarity, truth, and patience. The nobles murmured. Some were intrigued, others angry. But one thing was undeniable. The human was not broken. Vaelrix stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. Let him speak, she said firmly. Hear him fully before you judge. The room grew tense. Ethan began to speak of human history, of survival, loyalty, restraint, and adaptation. He spoke not to impress, but to inform. To show that humans thrived not through domination, but through understanding. By the time he finished, the chamber was silent. Nobles who had doubted began to reconsider. Vaelrix's anger burned, but even he could not ignore the clarity of Ethan's words. Vaelrix's eyes shone with quiet satisfaction. Not pride, not arrogance. Respect. The trial ended without a verdict yet, but the seed had been planted. A single human, calm and intelligent, had shocked an empire that thought it controlled everything. As the chamber emptied, Ethan walked beside Vaelrix. She said softly, "You are very dangerous. Do you realize that?" Ethan shrugged. Only if the Empire refuses to see humans for what we are. Vaelrix's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Perhaps they will learn. Soon enough. The grand chamber was quiet. Even the murmurs of the nobles had faded. Ethan stood at the center, unarmed, unthreatened, yet more dangerous than any fleet or weapon the Empire possessed. He began to speak. Not to intimidate. Not to boast. Not to charm, but to teach. Look around you, he said, his voice steady. You are powerful. Your armies can crush worlds. Your fleets can cross galaxies. But what makes a species strong is not just strength. It is loyalty, wisdom, and restraint. Power without control destroys itself. The council listened, some in disbelief, some in awe. Ethan continued. Humans have survived because we cannot rely on power alone. We endure, we observe, we understand. We make choices that others ignore. We do not attack for dominance. We do not seek control for its own sake. That is weakness. Strength is knowing what to fight, when to fight, and what is worth keeping. Vaelrix watched him closely. Her violet eyes, glowing softly, reflected a rare mixture of curiosity and pride. This human, this small, fragile-looking creature was teaching the greatest minds of her empire. A senior noble, Lord Vaelrix, scowled. Your words are clever, human. But words alone do not protect a weak species. They cannot command fleets. They cannot crush rebellion. Ethan smiled faintly. True, words do not fight wars. But words can change minds. And a mind changed is a power stronger than any weapon. I stand here unarmed, yet I hold more influence than anyone expects, because I speak truth, and truth endures. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Even some of Vaelrix's allies hesitated. The clarity in Ethan's words could not be ignored. He continued, calmly and clearly, detailing examples from human history times, when small groups survived against impossible odds. Times when patience and strategy won what brute force could not. You see, Ethan said, humans do not conquer for glory. We survive for necessity. We protect what we love. We endure hardship. And in that endurance, we grow stronger than any power can imagine. Vaelrix's expression softened. She had always assumed humans were fragile, weak, easily controlled. But here, she realized that what humans lacked in size or lifespan, they made up with determination, intelligence, and restraint. She turned to the council. Do you see now? He is not weak. He is formidable. And his kind, perhaps underestimated far too long. Some nobles nodded reluctantly. Others still scowled. But the tension had shifted. The lesson was clear. Humanity's strength was not in weapons or armies. It was in the mind, in strategy, in patience. Ethan finished speaking. Silence fell again. This time, it was the silence of awe, of reflection, of realization. Vaelrix's anger burned, but even he could not deny the truth. The human had survived trials, whispers, and manipulations that would have broken any other species. And he had done it without raising a hand. Vaelrix approached Ethan, her expression unreadable. "You have done more than survive," she said softly. "You have taught an empire a lesson no one else could." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I did what humans have always done. We endure, we survive. And sometimes, we change everything by being ourselves." The chamber emptied slowly, nobles leaving with whispers of surprise and respect. The empire had witnessed something extraordinary, a human, small and unarmed, teaching powerful aliens about restraint, strategy, and survival. Vaelrix remained behind, her gaze lingering on Ethan. She realized that her fascination had deepened. This was not just curiosity anymore. It was respect, admiration, and perhaps something more complicated, something that made her heart quicken in ways she had never expected. Ethan, as usual, remained calm. He understood only this: the Empire had begun to see humans differently. For the first time, they understood that strength was not only in weapons, but in mind, loyalty, and choice. And that understanding would change everything. The palace gardens glowed under two moons. Light shimmered on the alien plants, casting long, delicate shadows across the marble paths. Ethan walked slowly, observing everything, as he always did. He had learned that even in beauty, the galaxy hid danger and opportunity. Lady Vaelrix approached him, moving with her usual grace. But this time, her eyes were different, serious, intent, vulnerable even, though she would never admit it. "You have impressed everyone," she said softly. "The council, the nobles. Even Vaelrix is reconsidering his position. You have survived trials no human should face." Ethan nodded. "I did what humans have always done. We endure, we learn, and we make choices." Vaelrix paused. Her gaze held his. "And now you have a choice. You could take wealth beyond imagining, power that even the highest nobles would envy. You could rule alongside me, have status, influence, even anything you desire." Ethan studied her quietly. The offers were tempting by any standard. He could command fleets, control resources, and live in luxury. But he did not move. His face remained calm. "No," he said simply. Vaelrix's violet eyes widened. She had not expected that answer. "No, you refuse everything? Even the power, the privilege, the safety?" "I refuse ownership," Ethan replied. "I came here as a guest. I will leave as a free man. That is what humans value most: freedom, respect, choice." Vaelrix stepped closer, her expression a mix of shock and curiosity. You do not desire power?" "I desire fairness, respect, and the right to be myself," Ethan said. "Nothing more, nothing less." The words hit her in ways she could not name. She had spent centuries seeking control over others, bending minds, shaping loyalties. And here was a human, refusing what she thought every being craved: influence, status, domination. A quiet moment passed. The garden felt still. The moonlight reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, she realized that she could not control him, and that fascinated her. More than that, it frightened her. "You are dangerous," she whispered. "More dangerous than you know." Ethan smiled faintly. "Only if you fail to understand humans." We are strongest when we refuse to be controlled. Vaelrix's lips curved into a slow smile, almost hidden, almost shy. You are unlike anyone I have ever met. And you are unlike anyone I have ever met, Ethan replied. His words were calm, simple, true. For hours, they walked through the gardens in silence, each observing the other. The nobles and council would never understand what had just happened here, the subtle bond forming between a human who refused control and an alien noblewoman learning respect. Fascination, and perhaps something more complicated. Finally, Vaelrix spoke. I could give you everything. Power, wealth, influence, even loyalty. Yet you choose freedom instead. Because humans live by choice, Ethan said simply. And a life without freedom is no life at all. Vaelrix nodded slowly, a rare gesture of acknowledgement. Then I will respect your choice, she said. Even if it challenges everything I believed. Ethan's calm eyes met hers. Respect is not weakness, he said. It is the foundation of strength. And now we both understand that. For the first time, Vaelrix realized that fascination had grown into respect, respect into admiration. And perhaps, though she would not admit it aloud, into something closer to trust. Something humans call friendship, or maybe even loyalty. As the moons shone down on the palace, a quiet truth became clear. She could not command him. She could not bend him. She could only learn from him, and that realization made her heart beat faster than any conquest ever had. Ethan, as always, remained calm. But he understood the unspoken truth. He had not only survived the Empire, but he had changed it. And perhaps in time, he could change her as well. The human ship glided through the stars, silent and steady. Ethan stood on the bridge, looking at the vast expanse of space. Behind him, Lady Vaelrix's presence was quiet, almost imperceptible, yet he felt it. She did not need to speak. Their understanding had grown without words, built on respect. Restraint and trust. The galaxy had changed. When Ethan returned, it was not as a prisoner, nor as a visitor, but as an ambassador of humanity. The Empire, once convinced that humans were fragile and weak, now regarded them with awe and caution. Stories of his calm defiance, intelligence, and strategic mind had spread across systems. Humans were no longer seen as small, short-lived creatures. They were mirrors of resilience and power. Vaelrix walked beside him during the first formal assembly. The chamber was massive, filled with representatives from countless species, all curious to see the human who had changed the Empire's perspective. The nobles whispered, their eyes wide with surprise, respect, and a hint of fear. Ethan began to speak. His voice was calm, deliberate, and firm. We do not conquer for glory. We do not seek control for its own sake. Humans survive. We endure, we learn. And when the time comes, we act not to dominate, but to protect, to build, and to understand. The chamber fell silent. Even skeptics could not ignore the truth in his words. Alien leaders exchanged glances. Fleet commanders and diplomats alike nodded subtly. A quiet revolution of thought was happening. Without a single weapon fired, Vaelrix's eyes shone with pride, though she did not say it aloud. Ethan had not only survived, he had taught the galaxy a lesson no one else could. One of the senior nobles asked, cautiously, and the humans, what do they want from us? Ethan smiled faintly. Only understanding, respect, and peace. Nothing more. Nothing less. The council erupted into murmurs of agreement. Slowly, the galaxy began to realize that strength was not always measured in fleets, weapons, or sheer numbers. It could be measured in patience, loyalty, intelligence, and the courage to remain true to oneself. Vaelrix remained by Ethan's side, a silent witness to history. She had offered him power, status, everything the Empire could grant. And he had refused it, choosing freedom and principle instead. That choice had reshaped the balance of power. As the assembly ended, Ethan turned to her. Humans were never meant to conquer, he said quietly. We were meant to reflect, to show others what strength can be without cruelty, what courage can be without violence. Vaelrix nodded. Then humans have taught even me something invaluable. Ethan's gaze drifted toward the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, mysteries, and possibilities. Yet now, humans were no longer underestimated. They had a reputation that would echo across light years, a symbol of endurance, intelligence, and quiet power. And somewhere in the silent depths of space, other species began to whisper, "Do not underestimate humanity. They are calm, patient, and unlike anything you have ever faced." The human ambassador smiled faintly, knowing that the galaxy had learned a new rule. Strength was not always in force, but in restraint. And sometimes the smallest, quietest beings could change everything. Vaelrix watched him with admiration, fascination, and respect. No words were needed. Their bond, forged through trials, understanding, and choice, spoke louder than any declaration. Ethan had come as a simple human, a traveler lost in alien space. But he returned as a legend. Not because he conquered, not because he dominated, but because he was human. And in that truth, the galaxy understood something it had never known. Humans were a force to be respected. Not for what they could destroy, but for what they could endure, survive, and inspire. The stars stretched endlessly before them. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt a quiet, new hope.